And now, live from downtown Amarillo, Texas, this is the Amarillo Pioneer Podcast. Here's your host and the editor of the Amarillo Pioneer, Thomas Warren.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Amarillo Pioneer Podcast again this evening, and we are excited to be speaking with another candidate running in the May 6th election cycle. The candidate joining us this evening is John Adair. He is a first-time candidate running for Amarillo City Council Place Number 3. That is the seat currently held by Eddie Sauer. Eddie Sauer is not seeking re-election this year, and three candidates are running. So Mr. Adair is going to be facing Tom Sherlin and Kat Massey in this year's election, and we're going to be speaking with John a little bit about why he's running and some of his priorities and some of the issues he wants to tackle if he gets elected. But before we get started, John, thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And how are you doing this evening, sir?
Well, thanks for having me on here. It's great to talk to you. I'm doing good this evening.
You're calling from not too far from me. You're actually, funny thing about John Adair, you learn things about people whenever they run for office. He lives just down the street from me.
I know. I was going to say, hey, neighbor, what, 3 blocks, 4 blocks?
3 or 4 blocks, yep. You should have just come on down for this, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, before we get into all the issues, why don't you just take a minute to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for city council this year?
Well, a little bit about myself. I've lived in Amarillo pretty much forever. I moved up here a year after I graduated. I attended Amarillo College for a short time and then started working. I worked for a billboard company. I worked there for 15 years. I was a professional freestyle dirt bike rider for 8 years. I did that while working at the billboard company, and now I'm trying to run for city council.
You know, one of the interesting things about you is I noticed you're one of the many candidates running this year who is retired, but you're actually one of the younger retired candidates, and that's pretty impressive as somebody who likes to see younger people involved in government. It's kind of funny. You are one of the younger candidates this year, despite being much older than me. So I do have to applaud you, though. Before we get into some specific issues, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the top issues you'd like to tackle if you get elected to the city council this year?
It's kind of hard to narrow it down. There's a bunch. I think one of my top issues is we've got a sanitation problem. We've got a lot of trash all over town that's not being picked up. Another concern of mine is our police department. Over the last couple of years, it seems like response times have increased and increased. And supporting small businesses. I'd like to see our small businesses, I'd like to know that they're, getting every kind of help that they need and what they need to succeed, because small businesses are the backbone of our community.
Absolutely. Well, I will ask you, we're in a really bad economy right now, and people are hurting.
Really.
It's tough.
It is.
And I think you've probably seen it in your life. I know I've seen it in mine. And people are losing their jobs, they're losing their businesses and, their houses and cars. It's just a really tough time. So how are you going to make sure, like you said, that, businesses are such a key priority for you? How are you going to make sure that the businesses who are struggling, the business owners who are really kind of facing a tough time in the city, how are you going to make sure that they have the ally and representation they need on the city council to make their lives a little easier?
I would just make sure that they know that we're there to do whatever we can for them. And like you said, this economy has become really hard, and it's impacting every business I know. There's not a lot that can be done, but there's support out there.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the issue that's on everybody's mind this election, and that is the Civic Center. I'm sure you followed Alex Fairley's lawsuit where he sued the city over the last attempt to do the Civic Center project, and a lot of things came out in the courtroom and in Judge Souter's ruling that put that attempt to do the Civic Center in a pretty negative light. However, you still talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people still feel like the Civic Center is something we have to do something about. So, if you were elected, is the Civic Center going to be a priority for you? And if so, how are you going to make it happen this time?
First of all, the Civic Center is not going to be a main priority to me. We've got a lot of other things that need to be looked at and worked on. We've got a lot of departments that aren't operating efficiently. And it's just kind of an opinion of mine that you need to make sure that your basics are working and functioning properly when it comes to spending money before you branch off into other pet projects. Now, as far as the Civic Center goes, it would be great to have one, but kind of like in that lawsuit, the judge basically came out and said that the way they went about doing it and funding it was illegal. So when we do a Civic Center, we need to make sure that we do it the right way, the correct way, in a way that doesn't overburden the taxpayer. And I mean, that's kind of like if you look back, at our ballpark, a lot of people wanted it. And I think even a lot of the people that wanted it liked it when we got it, but they didn't agree with how we got it. And what I mean by that is if you look, if everybody goes and looks at their tax statements, their property tax statements after that, everybody's property values increased dramatically. And that was a way of raising taxes without saying that you're raising taxes.
So I'll ask you this, John. You mentioned the property values going up. Do you think that the property values went up directly as a way to pay for the Civic Center, or sorry, not Civic Center, the ballpark improvements?
I do. And the only reason I say that is because if you look back at everyone's statements from 2019 to 2023, there were dramatic increases. And then if you look forward from 2019, say back to 2015, I mean, there were slight increases. We're talking 2%. And I think last year my property taxes went up a whole 6% or 8%. So explain why prior to 2019 they were very slight increases, and then after it was just dramatic increases.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into a related issue, and that's the tax rate. The tax rate in Amarillo is one of those situations where you talk to everybody and you're going to get a different opinion.
Yes.
And at the same time, like we were talking about earlier, economy's really bad right now and times are kind of tough. But we still have to pay for firefighters. We still have to pay for the police. We still have to pay for trash service and sewage and everything else. So if you're elected, how are you going to make sure that Amarillo has a tax rate that's low and livable while also ensuring that the essential services of the city, public safety, water, those kinds of big issues are fully funded and taken care of as Amarillo continues to grow?
In my honest opinion right now, I think the tax rate that we are at, I know a lot of people compare ours to Lubbock, and other cities, and I think our tax rate is completely livable as it is right now. I think what we have seen in the past, kind of like I said, with inflating property values, I think we have seen a lot of our departments be defunded so that money could be shifted towards other pet projects and stuff.
I understand. I absolutely do. Well, I have one final policy question for you this evening before we get into some of the fun stuff. This is an issue that is so important to this area, but unfortunately, I don't think it gets the attention it deserves sometimes, and that is the issue of water. Here in the Texas Panhandle, we live and die with water because we have the ag community, we have farmers, ranchers, but we also have the cities that need the water. And,
Exactly.
Right now, I don't remember the exact year, but I believe the projections say by 2040, the population of the state of Texas is expected to double. And while a lot of that population growth is going to come south of Interstate 35, Amarillo's growth is not slowing down. And we are still in a position where, as the city continues to grow, we have to, provide more services to a larger group of people and to a larger footprint for the city. So, if you are elected, how are you going to ensure that Amarillo has the water that it needs as the city continues to grow for our city to thrive?
Well, that's a good one. I mean, a lot of our water comes from rainfall. I think as long as we don't see like a major drought like we did year before last, I think we can store plenty of water in the playas that we have in the water storage from runoff. I mean, I think it would be a major drought for us to be in that big of a problem. And other than that, I believe Lake Meredith is still an option.
Sure, I understand. Well, John, we've kind of changed things up this year a little bit. In some of these past election cycles, we've been doing these interviews for years and years and years. And in some of these past interviews, we've sat here for an hour and talked about policy. And I love that. But the thing is, we've heard from people who've said, hey, that doesn't really give us a chance to get to know the candidates all that well, who they actually are. And so we have a fun series of get-to-know-you questions we want to ask tonight to hopefully give people a better idea of who John Adair actually is, not the candidate, but the man himself. So if you are ready,
Okay.
We'll go and jump right into these.
Okay.
What is your favorite thing about Amarillo?
My favorite thing about Amarillo is it's still got that hometown vibe. I grew up in a smaller town up until I graduated high school. I grew up in a smaller town that had a hometown vibe, like just it's church, it's community, it's a great place to raise your children. And that's what I love about Amarillo is even though it is big, I mean, you've still got that hometown vibe. It's a lot of everybody knows everybody, and it's church, it's community, it's a great place to raise a family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what is your favorite restaurant in Amarillo, and what's your go-to order when you go there?
Oh, wow, that's a hard one.
It's a tough question.
Man, there's so many. Um, I have to choose one. Man, you're making this hard.
I know these are the toughest questions you're going to get all cycle. I'm telling you.
Can I list like my top five? Because that's
Go ahead.
just
your top five.
That's just too hard to narrow it down to one.
What are your top five?
I would say I like Aspen Creek. I like their steaks. We do their steak specials on Mondays a lot. My number two would be La Fiesta. And my favorite plate there would be the chicken fajita quesadillas. That's my go-to. My third would be Coyote Bluff. I usually mix it up. A burger with jalapenos on it there would be my favorite. What are we on? 4? I would say Bubba's 33 would be my 4. And my 5 would be Texas Roadhouse.
Nothing wrong with those choices.
Once again, the steak.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. And finally, what's an interesting fact about you that the people listening to this probably don't know?
An interesting fact about me. Wow, hard one. I don't like the color pink too much.
You don't like the color pink. Why is that?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I've got a girlfriend that loves the color pink, and I think I've been surrounded by enough pink that I'm about tired of it.
Sure, I understand. I understand. Well, I have to ask you this final fun get to know you question. A few nights ago, we asked a candidate running in another race that question, and their answer was, I'm not a Cowboys fan. And people are just, angry when you start talking about that issue. And so I felt like that's something that we really deserve to know.
And that's, I kind of wanted to stay away from sports for that reason.
Well, I'm going to make you go into that issue. So, John Adair, are you a Cowboys fan? And if not, who's your team?
I'm really not a football fan. A big football fan. I do like the Cowboys.
So we'll put you on Team Cowboys.
But sometimes I root against them just to give everybody else a hard time.
I understand. It sounds like you, from all the interviews we've been doing, it sounds like you could end up on a council full of Cowboys fans. So you just need to be aware of that. But for those who are listening who are undecided, they're saying I have 3 choices and I just don't know who I'm going to pick for place 3. Would you mind just giving us a quick elevator pitch and tell us why you're the man who needs to be elected to that place 3 seat on the city council this year?
Oh, I think I'm the best choice because I want to make positive changes in this town, and I think we've had councils in the past that haven't made the people a first priority. And I'm not one for making guarantees, but the one guarantee I can make is that considering what the people want is always going to be my first priority.
Well, for those who want to get involved, they want to donate or get a yard sign or knock on doors, they just want to do something to get John Adair elected to the city council. How can they go about doing that?
I've got a John Adair for citycouncil.com. There's actually a good extended bio on me and a lot of probably extended answers to some of the questions you asked tonight. And they can request yard signs there. They can also go to John Adair for City Council on Facebook or go to my regular Facebook, John Adair, and look me up at any one of those three.
Well, that is excellent. John Adair, for those who are listening, we really hope that we gave them a good idea of who you are and why you want their votes. But either way, we really appreciate you being with us this evening, and we wish you all the best on the campaign trail, sir.
Good deal. Thanks for having me on here.